because it was so big, we didn't have enough room to use it comfortably. My wife never used it. It never got used, and it just sat there. And so then it was a matter of, it was free. We took it, but then we're like, we don't want it. So then we got rid of it. And it was a mistake because it was just too much stuff for the space.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Big Fitness Show, episode 56. Wow, that was one take. Now I messed it up. Who cares? I don't know. We're going to keep going. I got my tea. I can actually speak right now. And also, I got one of my best friends, one of the people that tolerate me. That's how I consider them to be best friends. Big Mike Burns, tolerating my insanity and OCD nature. And
oh, shoot. Yeah, I do tolerate it.
My spiteful, vengeful business practices that I tell them about off air.
I do tolerate it because I am the same. I think we're two peas in a pod when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I tolerate you, you tolerate me. It works out pretty well for both of us.
Oh, so WWE has shadow banned you and copyright claim blocked you? I hope not. You still need to get that tryout. Like I always say, I told you the best way to get a job there is completely and utterly bury me publicly. And you will, riches will be bestowed upon you that you can only imagine. I would like to be a part of that.
Maybe. I did miss out on some extra work when they were in town this past week. So, maybe I'm shadow banned now too. So who knows? But
they were in Chicago. That's right.
Yeah, they were a couple days ago. So,
so memorable. I forgot they were in Chicago. So, but what we're going to talk about today, we do actually have memories. See that segue? We have memories of some of what we're going to talk about today, and that is some of our biggest, and maybe not so big, but they're all kind of just as frustrating at times when you have a home or garage gym. In my case, I've had both, a home gym and now two garage gyms. You tend to make a lot of mistakes, whether you're a business or not. And when you're in an affiliate situation, which you and I are with our businesses and brands, you can really make a lot of mistakes when it comes to the equipment, the space, the power. I'm experiencing a lot of that stuff with the electricity and just everything in general. We're going to examine that and share our experiences so people don't have to repeat the very expensive mistakes that we have both made.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those deals with the home gyms. If you've never had one or don't know what you're doing with it, it's a learning process to figure out what works for you and what you can do and what you can't do. And I have, I spent some time online looking up home gyms, and as I've been building my home gym over the years and it's been growing, I've had a home gym for at least 10 years. I've had a home gym, or it's been in my garage, and I've converted my garage to be my garage gym. And I've seen so many things over the years, and a lot of things you see on YouTube is home gyms that spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to customize their home gym because they all look cool and all the bells and whistles and all that kind of stuff. But how do you do it on a budget? And then when you're trying to do it on a budget, you're wanting to make sure that you're buying the equipment that you need. And there's some stuff that you buy that you never use. And then it's like, well, I wasted my money on this. And so it's just this learning process that you got to figure out. And I've made some mistakes over the years, and I'm sure you've made plenty of mistakes with the equipment you've got. And hopefully we can, keep you from avoiding those same mistakes when we talk about what we did in this episode and how we can help you save a little money and maybe not make the same stupid mistakes we did about our gyms when we were building them too.
Yeah. I think the first, there's a lot. This could be the longest episode we've ever done. But here's the number one thing, and my wife has been great about doing this, and we're going to do it in the new garage gym. And as we kind of like make both spaces, and that's kind of what I'm getting to, make both spaces not too cluttered and stuff on top or look like most people's garages when there's not gyms in there. And that really is trying to measure out exactly your space. In other words, my number one tip, and a mistake I still made today, and I shouldn't have before we filled the hot tub up, you take blue painter's tape and you literally mark off where you're putting the equipment before you even get it. What are the dimensions of this all-in-one trainer, this treadmill? And then when you have a completely bare space, a garage, a home, a sunroom, whatever it is, a bedroom, you can look and see and walk around the painter's tape to make sure you have a path. You know what it's going to look like. Even most of these sites now have augmented reality where you can put the piece of equipment in the room or the garage or whatever, and now
Yeah.
you can see exactly what the pieces look like to a certain degree. Because the worst thing is, you put an all-in-one trainer together and you realize, holy God, it's not centered. It's not centered,
Yeah,
and it
sure.
weighs 1,000 pounds and it's not centered. Or
Yeah.
another piece of equipment that you can't really move, or say in CrossFit type thing with the PRX Performance, you bolt it into the wall and you
Yeah.
realize, oh geez, I didn't even pull my car in the garage to realize. I mean, we're skipping around, but measuring and planning out your space
Yeah.
would be avoiding maybe all the mistakes after that if you can help it. So that's my
Yeah.
number one suggestion.
100%. I agree with you there. The permanent stuff in your space is huge, where you got to figure out exactly where it's going to go, and do some movements with it too. That's another thing I would say. Like you brought up the rack. If you bolt the rack into the wall, so I have the Rogue foldable rack. I don't remember the exact number or naming of it, but it's a Rogue foldable rack that can fold away, and so it's the short arms that stick out. But you put a barbell on there, so you measure it for you measure it for the rack and what's going to fit spacing wise, but then you want to see where you're at with the barbell. And so when I took and I did some squats and I figured out how I would move with it, and so I did make a slight mistake. I wish that, and it was partly because where the studs were and how it lined up, you got to bolt them into the studs of the wall. I wish I could shift it 6 inches to the right. It would make it so much, just that much more room on the left side to when you're racking and unracking the plates, taking them off and doing the movements and stuff. If I just would have moved it 6 inches, 12 inches to the right, but I didn't want to go that full 16 inches for the stud. So it just kind of,
You weren't quite centered, or it wasn't quite going to be symmetrical either way, no matter which way you did it.
yeah, it wasn't so much about the symmetry. It was about the spacing. Cause the way, I mean,
So you could
how
load the
my,
plates.
yeah, how my gym's set up. So like it's the front of the garage is here, and then you had to move away from I don't want to say the front. So like when you drive in where the nose of the car would be, that wall was obviously set. So then how far away from that did I go? And I wish I would have gone 6 inches further away, because it wasn't going to be symmetrical. I didn't put it in the middle of the wall either way, because it's 22 foot or whatever. But I wish I would have gone 6 inches away and really spaced it out even better than what I did, because now when I go on this side of the rack to put plates on, it's like a tight fit, and I'm a big guy, so I wish I would have given myself that extra room, but I didn't. It Yeah, I mean, I did the best I could with it without moving it another 16 inches further down.
One of the things that it sticks with me too, like no matter what, if it's not
Yeah,
quite centered, even this wall I have over here, the wood thing, I wish I could have added another panel, but I would have to cut it down. See, we go through
sure.
all these things with uneven spaces. I would say this, I include it on my YouTube channel all the time, and I don't know if you've seen it. I measure stuff and put a video out because I think a lot
Mm,
of people don't realize all-in-one trainers. Like I got a comment yesterday about the Sunstream Evolve Mini, that mini infrared sun I
yeah.
have, and the person said, how much space, or what's the width of the doorway to get in and out? And I'm like, that's going to make a great video, because I never put that in my review. I always
Yeah.
try to be very aware of that kind of stuff. And when I do that, I do measure from the end of the barbell on each side on, say, a Smith machine, or in the power rack case of yours, and see if you need another minimum 8 to 12 inches on each side in order to be able to get around the back. And most of these all-in-one trainers, especially in some power racks, have plate storage. So you got to go around the barbell, and you're tight there. So people don't realize when they see the exterior dimensions, I think most times they're not going from one end of the Smith machine bar to the other, or in the case of the power rack,
Yeah.
with a barbell loaded, which is going to be wider than the rack. So that's space is a huge mistake that you can avoid with 15 minutes of planning, like
Right.
putting down the painter's tape. Not much at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something that where spacing things out from a moving perspective too, like when you're doing movements and you're going from machine to machine, or from a piece of equipment to a piece of equipment, can you get around? Can you make it move? Can you move it away if it's a movable piece of equipment? Like I have two pieces of set positioning. I have the rack, the Rogue rack, and then I have a kickboxing bag that's hanging. So those two are set where they're at. So I had to do some planning to figure out how this was going to work. And so for the rack, I already talked about that. For the bag, I tried to plan it out to where I could get on all sides of the bag, obviously except for the back because there's a wall, right? But 180 degrees of the bag usage and
And you
have
need to be
enough
in the
room.
joist, right? You need to attach that to the
Yep.
joist in the ceiling.
Yep. Yep. So that was one of those deals where it was like I needed to kind of plan it out ahead of time. And then I had to plan because of the spacing issue. I needed to plan out that, but then also storage of the equipment because I have a rower and I have an air bike. And so now how do I store these while I'm not using, or if I'm using the bag, where do I put stuff and how do I move it all around? So you got to be real strategic with how you're spacing things out and how you're storing things. And that tape thing, I've never done that. I'm going to do that with the treadmill that's coming because it will give me a really clear visual of exactly what the square footage is it's going to take up and see how full the gym is. But I mean, you really just got to be conscious of that with space. One of the things that I ran into with my initial home gym was we had a single car garage that I ended up converting into a room because I sealed off the garage door with some plastic covering to insulate it and just kind of closed it up so that in the wintertime I could be warm. And in the summertime, it wouldn't get too hot in there either. And so I sealed that off and I put down horse stall mats so that there was gym floor. But I took a single car garage, split it in half. So I had half of the space was my gym. And then it was a single car garage. That's all we had. And it was a small house. So it turned it into like a storage unit also. And then there was just stuff everywhere and I would store all the supplements out there and there were shelves and I had to get crafty with it and build things and run out of space. And so the spacing issue, you just got to make sure you know your space and where the equipment's going to fit, because then you end up not having enough room and then it's aggravating every time you try to get a workout in and then you just don't want to be in there and then you end up not working out because you didn't plan ahead enough to make sure you have enough space. Like in that gym specifically, I wish I would have made the gym part of it just a little bit bigger. I had it as my home office and my gym, and I should have made my home office a little bit smaller and the gym part a little bit bigger because I would have just had more room for stuff. And then, bringing in different equipment and things, you just get too much equipment for the space and it just doesn't work. And then it's discouraging because you're always frustrated and annoyed with trying to work out and bumping into everything. So it's huge. I mean, you really got to plan out your space. And that's a big pro tip there. The blue painter's tape, marking out the floor so you know what it's actually going to be like before you buy the equipment.
Yeah, the other thing too is on the painter's tape, just one last thing, or if you have a piece of paper with Scotch tape right in the middle of the square or the rectangle or whatever, write down what's going to go there. Because you're not going to remember, I guarantee.
Sure.
Even though some of the stuff's bigger than others, it just helps. There's only one thing, the width or the depth or the wall or the studs are all important factors. The number one limiting factor of any gym space potentially is the height. That will severely limit, like in our last apartment, we were in the home gym and our ceiling height here is 12 feet. We're lucky. One of the few apartments and even the garages are now 20 feet high.
Yeah.
But in our last one, it was maybe 96 inches at the most.
Sure.
So we were limited, but obviously couldn't put a Sorenex or a Rogue 101 inch and above.
Yeah.
But were very limited with the Force USA all-in-one trainers. They had to be maximum maybe 91 inches because then when you're doing the pull-ups, which is the number one thing that's going to require the most amount of height, is pull-ups and muscle-ups.
Yeah.
Even 5-6 inches, you're tapping the ceiling.
Sure.
And then on other things, if it's too close, most of the all-in-one trainers, the wheels for the functional trainer, the cables, is the highest point. So if you're tapping the ceiling with that, it's literally rubbing against the ceiling. You just gotta, the height would be the first thing I would measure in any space because that's what's going to narrow it down for what you can put in the space.
Yeah.
That's it. And it might not be for, a treadmill or a bike or a rower or whatever. Although if you put the rower and store it, if the ceiling's low, it's going to hit the ceiling.
Yep.
So the ceiling height will be number one, what you need to measure and what you need to see. And if you need to put blue painter's tape, all the way up. So that way, when you put the augmented reality or whatever picture up there to measure it, you know, oh man, this is good. But you'll know by
Yeah.
looking at the specs, this is not going to work.
Yeah. The height is a big, a big concern, specifically for guys over 6 foot tall, like you and I. But I mean, if you're under 6 foot, the height for movements aren't as big a concern.
Well,
The
it is if
equipment
the
is still
pull-up
an
bar,
issue.
if the equipment's
Right.
high and you're short, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because your
Good
pull-up
point.
is still the same.
Yeah, good point. Good point. The equipment is high for me. When I was when I had my old home gym, I built a squat rack for myself, and so I custom fit it to the space because the ceiling was 8 foot 3 inches high, and then but I'm 6'5", and so 8 foot 3 inches doesn't leave much room for a pull up bar. So I made a pull up bar, and I could never do full pull ups. I mean, I could, but I mean, like my hands could touch the ceiling where I was if I was standing up tall, and so I always had to do like bent leg pull-ups, and so I would hang and then I'd have my legs, and there could be no like kipping movements, no nothing to get me to cheat on pull-ups if I needed to help push through the pull-ups. It always had to be the most strict version of a pull-up. And so to create the pull-up bar, I ran uh, steel pipe from the ceiling and hung it down, and I was able to do my pull-ups that way. But for me, another thing with the height issue, the pull-up bar was a problem because I couldn't put one on my squat rack that I built. But then also doing any type of overhead pressing,
Mm.
I couldn't do it because if I pressed the bar over top, I had at the time I just had bumpers, and most bumper plates are the bigger plate. So I didn't even have a small set of 10s and 15s. The 10-pound plates I had were full-size plates. And every time I pressed overhead, I would hit the ceiling. There was marks on the ceiling
Same here,
where I
yeah.
hit it all the time. It was so frustrating. But you know, and if you're a little shorter, if you're under 6 foot, then that's not as big of a deal because you're probably not going to hit the ceiling with the height. And then another thing that is a little frustrating for me is specifically in CrossFit, you do a lot of wall balls. You can't usually for men, it's a 10-foot target. My ceiling then obviously was only 8'3", but the gym I have now is like 9'6". So it's not quite 10 foot, but it comes back at you so fast because I hit the ceiling and it comes right back down, and there's no bounce and with a slow come back down. So yes, the height is definitely a big concern when it comes to what equipment you can put in your gym and how you can set it up. And so definitely look at that square footage around, and then the height are two factors that are paramount to figuring out what goes in your gym for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, you just mentioned you're going to be getting one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I haven't had a chance to try it out, and that's a curved kinetic treadmill, which requires no power.
Yeah.
Your rower, I'm not sure about. I know the air bike
Nope.
doesn't require any power. So you have three pieces of equipment. Essentially, you're an off-grid type of gym.
Yep.
This is the next mistake, and I'm going to cover this the more we talk about it. I am going to put up a dedicated video concerning my garage gym and the mistakes, the things I can't correct either because we're renting the garage space. So,
Sure.
you know, when you own something, you can do a lot more with it. So, long story short about that, most of mine is off grid, but I do have a few items that require power. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the garage we're in right now, there's only one outlet,
Yeah.
and it's in the ceiling.
Sure.
So I got to run an electrical cord, and then also the overhead for each garage is obviously not going to be high because there's 4 garages and they're all shared on one particular breaker box.
Right.
So you're running in the limitation. So you may look and see, I mean, the most basic thing is if you have a treadmill, piece of cardio, smart fitness, whatever it is that requires power, you're tethered to an outlet. And unless you can add an outlet, move the outlets, that's a factor when you're putting the tape and measuring the space. You have to make sure you're near an outlet, that the cords are only 5 to 6 feet long. If you're lucky, that's the longest. Some are 3 feet long. So you're kind of tethered to there. So you may want to look at measuring the space also at the same time of the large piece of equipment, but also the powered piece of equipment in regards to an outlet, and seeing kind of where you are right there. Because electricity is a big, big deal. Lighting's a big deal. Powering the equipment's a big deal. And if you don't have enough on any of those fronts, that could be an added cost if you own. If you rent, then kind of have to put up with it.
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a concern because there's one, when in the new gym, um, or the gym that I have now, my garage gym now, it's still a single car garage, but it's the whole garage space. So I have space, but the outlet for it, there's two outlets in there. They're on the same breaker, but there's two outlets. So I could plug stuff in there and not have a problem. But where I would put a treadmill, if I were to get a powered treadmill, it would be at the furthest point away from that. So I would have to run an extension cord. And I haven't made that mistake by getting a powered treadmill. And that was part of the reason why we didn't want to. My wife and I've been looking on, getting some used
She wanted
equipment.
one. She wanted the powered one, right?
Oh, totally. She does. I mean, I think she still does. And so, but I would just kept saying, but then we got to run the power and I got to run a extension cord. And the way I would have to do it is I would have to either run it on the floor of the door, so where the walking path is, and so potential, obviously I would tape it down and whatever, but who knows, that's going to come up or it's going to look like crap, or I have to run it over the top of the door, which would then look like crap too. And so I just like that was one of the limitations of not wanting to get a powered piece of equipment, because there's so much there. I just didn't want to have it be dictated where I could put things. You could only put it in so many spaces, because of that. And another thing too, on the height piece of this, to go back to that for just a minute, if you are doing it in a garage gym, you have to account for the garage door tracks that are there. And that limits your space, limits your space as well. And so like, if you're planning to still use the garage door, now you can't do, there's so many things you can't do, because if you ever lift with the garage door open, you can't go as high because obviously it's lower than the ceiling is, but also the tracks, if you're fastening anything to the wall, like you couldn't put a squat rack, or you wouldn't want to put a squat rack underneath the garage door tracks, because that causes a problem. For me, in the gym that I have now, I've closed off that garage door. Like I literally built a wall in front of the garage door, so the garage door cannot come up, but I left the tracks there because I just didn't want to take the tracks down. So I was able to create more space for myself. And I have my kickboxing bag kind of hanging over the track because it attaches to the wall and then hangs over the track and comes down. And so I was able to save some space there because of the track. But that's another thing that you have to factor in when you're figuring out equipment, because like my rower, when I stand it up to store it, it hits the track of the garage door. And so I almost use it as like a hanger and hang it on there. But it's just, that was another thing that we didn't touch on in the height conversation. So we can get back to the power conversation now.
Yeah. There's a safety element to those tracks because it's sharp on the edges. I had my Squat Max MD under one of them in the last garage, and I put a piece of thick black styrofoam and wrapped it around because I wasn't hitting it when I squatted up, but it was kind of close. And what if I step off or I do like a little calf raise, slice, do the old Red Equals Green brother on that. So gig myself. I won't even get paid for that. No extra money, brother. Yeah, no bonus for that. So, but that ends up being a bad day when you end up cutting your head or doing whatever stupid stuff. They have new garage door opener tracks that are actually like more flush with the ceiling or the walls and stuff. They're kind of nice. I mean, I'm sure they're not cheap, but if you have a garage gym and you really want to have the full space of the whole ceiling from the door to the back, you can probably upgrade your tracks to that and it would look a lot cleaner. You could probably put up lights then. You could do a lot of different things that you wouldn't be able to do with those big old metal tracks. I mean, the ones we have are probably every bit as old as yours.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mine, the house is 25 years old. And so they're the original tracks that were there. And so they're big and bulky and clanky. And then the garage, the door that my gym is in now doesn't have a garage door opener, but that's another thing too. The 2-car garage that I have has a garage door opener. So that would be a big hindrance in the middle. And they make some that are side door openers now, so you can eliminate that if you want, but they're an additional expense and something to think about when you're building your garage gym. So, yeah.
Well, I think expense is probably the next thing we should talk about because there's that big thing about when you want to buy, we talked about in the past, join a Planet Fitness, get personal training see if you're going to stick with it for 2 to 3 months, and
Hmm.
then look into a home gym, garage gym. So if you've done that as far as starting your fitness journey 101 by going to a gym, making sure you're making a part of your daily routine, and you're saying, yeah, I can invest now and spend money because I'm not, this is my lifestyle now.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? I mean, there's all these different paths. There's people that have YouTube channels that are all Amazon brands and the cheapest
Sure.
stuff or the most affordable. Would you go the route of saying the same thing we just said about Planet Fitness? Would you say buy one of those Amazon ones or the cheapest piece of equipment you can buy to make sure that you want to stick with the home gym or garage gym for a certain amount of time? And now buy your Force USA, buy your
Mm.
True Grit, buy your full,
Yeah.
like, buy what's it, buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
Would you,
Sure.
what would you say, go straight into buy once, cry once, or would you recommend, just kind of buying a little here and there and then saying, okay, cool, and then
Yeah.
kind of starting all over again?
Yeah, I'll just tell you what I did for my home gym. It was find whatever cheap equipment I could. Like the only I would look on Facebook Marketplace. I would look and try to find people getting rid of stuff and try to find thing on a deal and try to see if I could get things cheaply. And that would be my first place to start, is to see what you can get. Like the Air Runner that I have, I got for like $90. Maybe it was definitely less than 100. I want to say between 75 and 90. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the Air bike that I have is it was super cheap because it was just it's old. I mean, gosh, it's probably from the 70s, like it's a really old bike, but it works. It's great. It's all mechanical. I mean, it's not from the 70s. It's probably from the 90s, I would say. But it was an old bike, and it made it super cheap and an easy piece of equipment to add. So I would try that, and I would start to just find used equipment first and see if you can get that. But to answer the question of would you buy once, cry once, or buy some cheaper stuff, I think, to me, if you're on a budget, for sure, if you got all kinds of money, then maybe buy once, cry once if you're committed to it. But I would start with the budget stuff and just look on Amazon, see what you can get. But the cool thing and the bad thing is there's a lot of junk on Amazon, but Amazon has a great return policy, so you can send it back if it doesn't work for you.
Man, a rack.
Well, I know, but if you're going to buy a big piece of equipment, I bought a pull down bar once that was just, I didn't like it. It was a lat pull down bar, and it was too short, and it connected, and so it was cheap, but it didn't fit, and for my big long arms, it was too narrow, and it just was one of those ones that have like the button, so you connect them and they piece together like that. And I was just like, okay, this wasn't worth it. So then I bought a bar that was twice as expensive, that was a solid bar that was nice and long, so I had plenty of room for it. And so the little pieces of equipment you can buy cheaply and not make that big investment. A big investment, if you're going to buy a big piece of equipment, then yeah, I say buy once, cry once. But if you're going to buy smaller things, if you're going to buy a dumbbell or two, then you can try to do the cheapest thing and then eventually upgrade and get something that's a little more sustainable after time. It's just back to the budget. But for me, what I did was I bought some cheap stuff and then have upgraded slowly over the years to some better stuff.
I think that, that's a great way to look at it. The way I look at it now, and it's probably just because it's after the fact. And like I said earlier, you and I have been fitness businesses. We review stuff. We talk about it. Product coming in is a necessity in order to drive our business. So we're kind of
Sure.
outliers with that. But there's the law of expansion and then the law of contraction.
Sure.
So I don't know if they're actual laws, but they are in my world right now, because I go into these different mindsets, because I really do, in a lot of ways, I guess, want to be more of an essentialist rather than a minimalist. And it's kind of impossible when you review fitness equipment. But there's times I do look and I say, yeah, it's cool to have, now I got to have 2 garages because we got the dumbbell rack. We had no space whatsoever to film or even work out. So it's kind of a necessity. But then I look around and I say, from a business standpoint, okay, what have I reviewed or continue to review that people aren't really interested in, or isn't converting sales, or both? And just got to make a tough choice to get rid of it. And sometimes, even if it's a great product, after you've done 12, 13 videos on it. It's how many more can you do? So
Yeah.
I look through this roller coaster ride of expansion and contraction. But I'll be honest with you, dude, outside of what we talked about last week about the pitfalls of what it is, here's the truth of it. Like with the way it works now, and I'm not talking about shelf life or if something goes wrong, with the way it works now, if I had to choose, say if I had to choose two pieces of equipment, strength equipment, one offline, one online, it would be the Speediance Gym
Mm.
Monster and the Total Gym.
Yeah.
They're small footprints. They do a lot. The Total Gym will last forever because it's so
Sure.
simple and built so
Yeah.
simply. I'd probably add an air bike or an off-grid runner like the curved treadmill you're getting and all that. But that would be all I would need. I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even know if I would go with dumbbells. I have them.
Sure.
That's great. But those things serve for not only bilateral, meaning barbell type stuff, but the unilateral dumbbell type movements, both of those machines.
Sure.
And I can put them both up against the wall in the dining room and they take up no room.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
if I didn't have a business right now, those would be the two pieces of equipment that I'd be like, and then everything else. The sauna is nice. The power treadmill is nice. The other things are nice. Actually, I have a Teeter Power 10 elliptical rower, which is off grid and portable. And that would be one for cardio I might keep. So I got
Yeah.
three pieces of equipment. And that's in my entire gym.
Sure.
That barely takes up a third of the one of the garages I have right now.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In the Speediance and the Total Gym on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, you can get it cheap. So I always recommend getting those off of there.
Yeah.
But the Gym Monster's $2,000. Maybe it's
Sure.
expensive, but man, I've been working out on it now like 65 days straight. I
Yeah.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it, man. So that's what
Yeah.
I would
Well,
say to anybody out there. When you find a couple pieces that you really, really like, you might be done right there. Or one
well,
piece, maybe.
yeah, I think that's the thing with a home gym is don't make the mistake of getting too much stuff. Too much equipment can be just a hindrance to what you're doing. And I've made that mistake recently. You know, my sister was getting rid of some stuff that they had in their basement, and I said, "Yeah, I'll take it. I'm the fitness guy. I'll take all the equipment I can get." Right, and now I've got this, and I've wanted for a long time. I bought the Rogue Rack because all the attachments and stuff that you can get to it. Just haven't wanted to spend the money on buying the attachments, and so for doing dips, you have a dip bar that hook connects right to the rack. And I was like, okay, this would be great. I can buy that. But then a couple weeks ago, my sister was getting rid of a dip station, right? So it's the big
Oh, the big
frame.
power towers.
Well, no, not the tower thing, just the dip part. Like it doesn't have the
Okay.
pull-up bar. It's just the like the almost like the pipe coming up from the floor, and it's just the dip part of it. And it's cool, and I'm grateful for it. But it does take up square footage in my gym, and it takes up space, and I can't put it away. Like I put it away, but it's still up in one piece, right? It's not like it collapses really easy. Whereas if I had the piece that connected to the rack, I could put it on the rack when I need it and then store it away when I don't. And so for me, this piece getting too much stuff can become a problem. And you get, it's free. Yes, that was cool. And I'm very appreciative. And I've used it some, but it's not one of those where I'm like, I need to keep this because I use it so much. I can do dips another way with equipment that can be stored away and out of the way. And so that's, to me, that's a big mistake that a lot of people make with the gym equipment is getting things. You know, my wife and I in our old home, uh, she wanted an elliptical, and ellipticals are big and bulky. And
Mm.
when you put that in a small space, it totally just takes over the space. And so we made a mistake. We got that elliptical, but because it was so big, we didn't have enough room to use it comfortably. My wife never used it. It never got used, and it just sat there. And so then it was a matter of, it was free. We took it, but then we're like, we don't want it. So then we got rid of it. And it was a mistake because it was just too much stuff for the space. You know, having stuff and free stuff is cool, but if it's too much for the space, it's ultimately going to hinder what you're doing in the gym all the time because you just don't want to go in there, you know?
Yeah, I feel that way about a lot of stuff. It's always cool. And we always have a picture from when we went to commercial gyms, Mike, where That elliptical is not that big because there's a row of 20 of them. It's not that big. Then you put it up against like this wall over here and it runs the entire length of the wall.
Yep.
And you need to be buying outlet with most of these ellipticals, most of the cardio equipment. It's a very tough thing because most people, their eyes are bigger than their stomach. Ours are no different.
Yep.
And you look at it and you look at it and you look at it and you want it and you're trying to if you have to try to convince yourself that it'll work, it's not going to work. Right. Trust me. So that's something right now. And we talked off camera. We have great talks pre and post show about this kind of stuff and where we're heading. And that's kind of what I'm looking at now. Like, I would love to go into minimalist fitness and like, well, you know, I mean, I have the X3 bar too. That's another variable resistance tool that takes up no space and it's pretty awesome. I got little stuff like the egg weights that my buddy John Hartnett got me, you know, that I use for boxing because I wasn't using the bag enough. Somebody else could use the bag I had, so they're getting use out of it. And I can just get my heart rate up, throwing punches like that, stomping my foot and throwing fake punches and everything, throwing work punches. I was going to do an entire workout on the fight camp bag and send it to him, me just throwing work punches at the thing. They wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't know what to do. This guy's an idiot, which they're right. They're right about that.
The title, Pro Wrestler Trains on the Fight Camp.
This is a pro wrestling boxing. You know what, dude? That's what I'm going to do for the channel. A pro wrestling boxing workout where I hit nothing.
The bag never moves.
All you hear is my foot stomping on the garage floor. And I throw three. I throw three at a time and then whip. That's what I do. You okay?
I'm fine. I'm just laughing too hard. That would be hilarious.
I'm going to do it. You think I'm not? Okay,
no, I know you will. I can't wait.
It'll be 45 minutes long, too, of all work punches.
That's awesome. Oh, my face hurts.
Sorry about that.
Laughing too hard.
So I think we can end on that low note or something. But
well, I mean, it's just those things. Like it's just so funny. That's hilarious.
Well, they just all right. Let's just they veer off for a minute. Just think about it. What a weird world we live in. And then when we go out into the real world of normal civilians, and you start saying the names, Johnny Swinger. Sure. Tommy Dreamer. Who else?
No.
You know, you could say The Rock and they would know, but how ridiculous are these names?
Yeah, no, it's fair.
You know? Oh, you don't know who the EST of WWE? Like, what the fuck is an EST? Right?
I don't know, man. That's super.
The normal people, normies, they're about to be exposed to a 45-minute fake boxing workout. Congratulations, everybody.
I want to see it. I
hope people
comment below if you want to see it. Comment below. Shoot us an email if you want to see Stevie do a 45-minute boxing workout of
where I hit nothing
punches. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, I'll make pretend that they have heat on me in a headlock. I'll just be on the ground fighting back. And then having the imaginary ref do the two, and then oh no. There we go.
Shoot.
I'm sweating now. I got to do some cardio.
Oh man!
Wow.
All right,
here we go.
Bring it back.
Whew.
Okay, so we got derailed there. Sorry, everybody, but thanks for indulging us. We appreciate it.
Well, all the indie workers listen and watch this anyway, right?
They're loving it. Yeah, I bet they're laughing. Matt, I'm sure you're laughing right now. So anyway, if that's, I mean, when to bring us back to the home gym conversation, making mistakes. When you are planning your home gym, planning what pieces you're going to do in it, please factor in space, equipment for the space. And then when it comes to getting the equipment that you want, figure out like what you need. You don't need all of the equipment in the world. Just figure out the essential stuff that you want. Like Stevie was just talking about, the essential equipment is what's important. Don't go out and buy the fanciest things if you're not going to use it, if you're not going to need it. Figure out the training style that you want and really focus in on that. Don't buy stuff that you don't need, and because it just takes up space and keeps you from working out. So, I mean, I think those couple things that we talked about are huge mistakes that people make when it comes to planning their home gym and growing a home gym and building the home gym or a garage gym. Don't do it. Okay.
Also, what you just said before, if they just if you just have the opportunity to get something for free, don't take it just because it's free.
It's free.
See if
Right.
it really works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, if you don't have the money, you'll put it to use. But if it's something
Sure.
like you're learning now with the dip thing now you have to
Yeah.
figure out a way to sneak it out without your sister knowing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, she won't care. She was just getting rid of it. They don't use it, so she gave it to me, and I'll use it and I'll keep it for a while until I decide to buy the attachment that I need or whatever. I just why spend the money when I can do dips a different way, you know?
Good,
And so I
good
use the
point.
bar. My daughters actually like they've used the bar more than I have because they go in and do little gymnastics things with it. So they're having a blast. So I'll keep it for that reason. But just don't get things that you don't need and build a home gym. I highly recommend everybody gets some type of gym equipment at home. Just make sure that you're planning and thinking ahead and not wasting your time and money and space in your house on stuff that just sits there. We've all seen the memes where there's a treadmill that's a coat hanger because you just don't use it. So try to avoid those kind of things. So anyway, with that, that's it for this episode of the Big Fitness Show. We appreciate you listening. If you got some value from this, share it with someone who might also get some value from it. We would love to engage with you and answer some questions and help and try to, help a little bit more in whatever way we can about answering questions that you have about fitness and how we are a little more reliant on ourselves and a little more resilient as we age and as a guy in his 40s and a guy in his 50s. We've learned a little bit, been through a lot on how to stay healthy and stay in shape and deal with all that life has thrown at us in 20 and 30 plus years of professional wrestling as well. So shoot us an email, thebigfitnessshow@gmail.com, or comment below on the YouTube channel. Say something in the comments. We'll get in there and engage with you and answer any questions that you might have. But for myself, for Big Stevie Cool, the draw of the Big Fitness Show, this has been the Big Fitness Show. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
And don't fall asleep in hot tubs.